Good morning, everyone. Just letting people coming in to the meeting today. Welcome to our annual and special members meeting. My name is Valentina Kova, and I'm the communications manager here at Ontario One Call. And I'm happy to welcome all of you today. And thank you so much for joining us this morning. We'll just letting people in and waiting a couple more minutes to make sure that everyone can join us. In the meantime, I have a few items to bring to your attention. First of all, I just want to remind everyone that this week is Sewer Safety Week. And I'm very proud of this initiative because it's the first joint initiative of its kind to raise awareness about sewer safety inspections. Sewer safety inspections are performed if a sewer is blocked outside the walls of a house, and they can save lives. They're free and they're easy to book. Ontario Safety Partners, as you can see them here, Ontario One Call, Enbridge, Utilities Kingston, the TSSA, and Kitchener Utilities have joined forces to create and promote a common campaign and make sure that we raise awareness through consistent messaging. I'm proud to share with you one of the materials that were created for this campaign, a short 30-second video that explains a bit more about the importance of sewer safety inspections. Thank you for the attention. I hope you like the video. We will start the meeting just in a couple of minutes. I just have a few more housekeeping notes for you about this meeting. This meeting is being recorded. The recording will be posted on our website later today or tomorrow. I would also like to remind you that you are welcome to submit any questions you might have by using the QA button at the top of your screen. We will address the questions at the end of the presentations, but you are welcome to submit them at any point during the meeting, and we will take a look at them at the end of the presentation. One last thing that I would like to bring up is the voting process. Each member of Ontario One Call is entitled to one vote for each of the 5 items up for approval at this annual meeting. Members had the ability to provide a proxy 48 hours before the annual meeting, or they could register for the annual meeting and vote by ballot. Each delegated senior leader who registered to vote by ballot will receive a link to their electronic ballot during this meeting this morning at the end of the presentation. Members with the ballot will be able to vote until 11:30 a.m. this morning. We will send out a communication by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning to notify members of the result of the vote. We use a weighted voting system. There are 5 subcategories of voting members, being 1, electricity industry members, 2, the gas and pipeline industry members, 3, the municipal and government industry members, 4, the telecommunications and cable industry members, and 5 other. Um, each of the 5 subcategories of members will have 20 votes to be allocated on a prorated basis based on each sector's voting. The result of the tabulation from each of the 5 member subcategories will decide the matter being voted upon. For example, bylaws need 51 yes votes out of 100 votes to be approved, and fees need 66.7 yes votes out of 100s to be approved. If there are any issues whatsoever with the voting, please reach out to the email address you see on screen, voting@ontarioonecall.ca. Thank you so much for your attention. Again, welcome to the annual and special members meeting this morning. I now would like to welcome Dean Dalpy, the chair of the Ontario One Calls Board of Directors. Mr. Chair, I will turn things over to you to start the meeting.
Great, thank you very much. Just would like to welcome everybody to the annual and special members meeting in 2023. I see people are still coming on. That's great. So I'll start things off. I'd like to start with a statement of land acknowledgement. So as we gather here today, we are reminded that Guelph and Sudbury are situated on the treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. As an organization with offices in the city of Guelph and the city of Sudbury, we have a responsibility for the stewardship of the land on which we live and work. Today, we acknowledge the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, of the Anishinaabe people, the Atikameksheng and Anishinaabe people, and the Wahnapitae First Nation, on whose traditional territory we are virtually meeting. So as an administrative matter, I just would like to make sure that everybody knows that there's 5 formal motions before the members that will be voted on, and we just had the comments on the voting process, so just remember that. I'd like to continue to move on with respect to the 2022 AGM minutes. I'd like to put forward that a mover on the minutes, please. Ms. Taylor moves these or motion to approve these minutes in 22. And Ms. Karen Marner seconds that motion. All in favor? So it's carried forward. So 2022 minutes have been carried forward. Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to move right now into the report from the chair. A lot has gone on Ontario One Call, and I'll get into those details, and we can continue with the annual meeting. I now have the distinct pleasure of presenting a brief report on the work of the board in 2022. By the way, there was a lot of work that went on. It has been an exceptional year of change for the organization. I will talk in a little bit in more detail of the steps forward we have taken later in my report, but on the outset, I want to thank the ministry and in particular the members for their continued support of the organization as it becomes a public safety administrative authority. Quite a long ways from where we were originally. Real progress. When we talk about building Ontario, it's impossible not to mention the exceptional improvements made in delivering complete locate packages in the last 9 months. And as you can see on some of the stats, last year, in the first 7 months of the year, only 45% of projects could be started on time, according to the Ontario One Call data. At the end of July this year, as you can see, we moved to 70% of the projects were starting on time. A huge monumental shift in Ontario One Call and the industry's ability to provide locate services. This kind of improvement is 55% year over year, has never been achieved before, and it's important to recognize this big step forward. Of course, now we have created a new bar to beat the next year, but I sense we are all up to this task of trying to get even better. And we need everybody's participation to be able to do that. There's a lot of different pieces that are tied to Ontario One Call and the ability to get locates done timely and accurately. So I ask everybody to continue their focus. Next slide, please. Excellent. So a big thank you goes out. As I said before, none of this could be achieved without the commitment from our members, the underground infrastructure owners, but they didn't succeed alone. This year, we work perhaps more closely than ever with the ministry, the teams and ministry staff, excavators, LSPs, and related sector associations. We work together on a series of challenges, and I'm happy to say that we have set ourselves up for success. The board is extremely pleased with the level of collaboration, now defining the interactions between Ontario One Call and its key partners. So we had a journey. and everybody stepped up, and we have to thank everybody for that. So proud of the Ontario One Call team. I'm also very proud of the board and how it managed governance changes brought on by the alignment of the authority board structure and other administrative changes that occurred. The truth is, Ontario One Call is truly evolving, and you can see that. It's a work in progress, but it's progress for sure, and we can't let our guard down. Next slide, please. We've had the good fortune of receiving the feedback and guidance from some very seasoned board members, as you can see on this list. Many members are leaving us after 9 years of service. This is an incredible commitment to an organization, and on behalf of the members and our partners, a heartfelt thank goes out to each and every one of you. Like any family, we haven't always agreed, but have found consensus on the most important issues and move forward with that purpose. Especially over the last year and a half, a lot of heavy challenges, a lot of time commitment by all these people. And it truly goes to show the professionalism that we have in our industry. These people we'll all miss, but I'm sure we'll see again around different industry roundtables, and we'll continue to get input from them. So thank you to all of you. Let's move to our achievements and highlight that a little further. In 2022, we looked at the needs of the organization through the lens of a financial sustainability. Board and members worked hard since 2018 to keep fees low and did quite a good job. And it was the right time, right place for that. But the right decision now is that we have to move this organization forward in 2022. And that is some of the things that will be voted on today. We asked an external firm to look at the business, the demands on our people and our technology, and compare us to the provincial authorities in our space. The results were informative and required us to act. We work closely with staff of the ministry to build a 3-year plan that will give us financial sustainability and anchor the new business plans. So you can imagine, for us to continue to move Ontario One Call forward, we have to build some things out now for next year and future years. And part of those changes are before the membership here today in the form of bylaw changes and fee proposals. For the record, we have recommended an increase in member fees to allow us to invest in the future of the organization. The people who keep this organization moving, we aren't doing it alone either. So again, the Ontario One Call, all the members, the excavators, everybody that's tied to this, these fees help us continue to move us forward, and hopefully everybody understands that. Just for the record though, we have recommended this increase to allow us to continue to move forward. And as you heard the ministry say, the province has stepped up and committed and invested up to $25 million into the organization to improve its capabilities, IT, training, and other offerings. This is a remarkable achievement. Ministry has not done that before, and they see how important Ontario One Call, the governance, making it a regulatory body, is to the success of Ontario as it continues to grow. And therefore, that's why we've received this investment. Great work by the ministry on this. The total increase over the next 3 years amounts to approximately $13 million. The government is putting in 25. And while the proposed increase on a percentage basis is substantive, it will go directly into improving service quality of the organization and building the strong foundation we all want for Ontario One Call. All told, everyone is stepping up to support the organization that is becoming a true public safety administrative authority with the capabilities to work in collaboration with industry to deliver timely locates, which we all want, and promote safe digging, again, a main driver behind Ontario One Call. So I'm excited about what the new organization can do to make the job of building Ontario safer and easier. Next slide, please. With many of our previous board members having arrived at the end of their terms, combined with the need to align on board structure with other administrative authorities of the province, we worked together to arrive at a new state of proposed board members to guide and provide oversight to the organization going forward. Going forward, we will have a board of 12 members. As per the resolution, members are being asked to vote on a new slate of directors, each for 1 year. Here, we have 4 representatives from among the underground infrastructure owners and 4 from the excavator community, filling 2/3 of the slate. Their bios have been made available on Ontario One Call's website for review in advance of the meeting. The remaining 4 positions will be filled with government appointees. We're happy to report the government has already appointed excellent members in Mitch Pansuk and Phil Gillies. 2 more will follow. We have decided to recommend a 1-year term only to provide an opportunity for the board to review its makeup of the board in terms of diversity and recruitment where necessary. So again, you may have asked why, and that is the reason. Our goal is to have a high functioning board that provides oversight, clear strategic counsel to the organization as it continues its transformation. And as you are all aware, this transformation will take years. Next slide, please. In the next few years, the investments we are making together will support the transformation of Ontario One Call. Truth be told, it's not a call center anymore. It's a full service organization, a regulator that has evolved as the industry evolves. By investing in the organization, we free it up to provide service, but also to explore new ways of doing things, new technologies, new ideas that will support our shared objective. We all want progress, and we know that to get there, we must invest in this exploration in the future. The government has agreed and has committed significant resources to this transformation and significant dollars. I want to thank the entire team under the leadership of Jim Keach for what they have achieved over the last 12 months. I also want, again, to thank all board members, both infrastructure owners, excavators, for their counsel, oversight, commitment to the organization. And many people might not be aware, but we have had many workshops over the last year and a half, and even before that, having representation across the different parts of the organization, a lot of learnings from on both sides, including government. And we're making Ontario One Call, the organization it is today and where it's going to go for the future. Your work has made us Ontario a better place, a safer place, and we'll continue to drive that. Thank you as well for the confidence you've shown in me. I've enjoyed the work and the effort that everybody has put forward. It's truly amazing, and I look forward to the rest of 2023 and beyond. Now over to Karen for the Treasurer's Report.
Thank you, Dean. Ontario One Call continues to remain in a solid financial position and is positioned to continue to implement the organization's full transformation towards an Ontario administrative authority. The balance sheet shows a reserve balance of 4.5 million, which exceeds the 3 million reserve requirement approved by the board. Revenues in 2022 rose to 10.3 million from 9.2 million in the previous year. Most of the revenues are obtained from the members' fee assessment model that had been previously approved by the membership. For 2022, we started our new dedicated locator service partway through the year. And for 2023, the dedicated locator revenues are aligned with the anticipated dedicated locator expansion as the model continues to be accepted and rolled out by the project owner community. Total expenses rose to 10.2 million from 9 million in the previous year. With ongoing changes to our legislative model and mandate, we continue to plan that expenses will increase in the future to reflect our new reality. Further, we need to make significant future investments in IT, safety promotion, and service delivery frameworks in order to meet membership expectations and the new legislative requirements. Ontario One Call continues to be fiscally responsible, and the financial outlook for the organization is positive as both the government and the membership are being actively engaged in the company's evolving mandate. Like most businesses in 2022 fiscal year, and thus far in 2023, we've been impacted by the steady growth in commercial interest rates, which is a financial burden as we prioritize our future programs and resources. We remain steadfast in implementing our strategic vision and to ensure we continue to be fiscally sustainable. Next slide, please. We are asking the members to approve Goldstein and Associates Chartered Accountant Professional Corporation as the independent auditor for fiscal 2023. You will see that as item 8.4, appointment of auditor for fiscal 2023 in your package. Members are asked to vote electronically at the end of this meeting. And with that, I would like to send it over to Mr. Jim Keach, our CEO of Ontario One Call. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Wasn't sure if I was froze there for a second. Thank you, Karen, for the introduction. And I want to start by welcoming everyone to the meeting this morning on behalf of all the staff and employees here at Ontario One Call. I think we have just over 150 participants in the meeting this morning, and that's great. And I think it shows the interest in what is going on here at Ontario One Call as we go through this this transformation. What I intend to talk about this morning, and I do have a fair bit to cover off here. I want to start by talking a little bit about the transformation that we're going through here that Dean touched on. Then I believe I need to go into a bit of detail in regards to the changes to both the bylaws and the fees. And I know a number of you on the call attended the webinars that we had in regards to this before, so I apologize. Some of this is going to be repeated, but I think there are some people who maybe didn't have that opportunity, and I just need to make sure everybody's aware of the changes because they are pretty significant. This is a pretty pivotal time for Ontario One Call and a pretty significant meeting that we're having here today. Then I want to spend just a bit of time looking forward, our vision for Ontario One Call for the next few years, and then I'll end up my comments, again, just reminding everybody of the voting process, and there will be a question period after that Valentina talked about at the start. But before I get into that, I want to start by saying some thank yous. I know generally that's done at the end, but I wanted to do this up front. And the first one is to the board of directors, the current board of directors. And as Dean mentioned, there is quite a changeover that we're going through here. And I want to express my appreciation in the short time that I have been here for the support that I have got from all of them. And not just the support, but the availability that people on the board have been available to me for questions and guidance, and that's much appreciated. And in particular, the chair and the chairs obviously put in a bit more effort than the board members. So to Dean, Karen, and Nancy, a very big thank you. It was much appreciated, and to all board members. I understand the change, but again, thanks, and just a bit sad that we didn't get a bit more time to work together. But then on the other hand, I'm excited about the new board and getting to know people and meet people and working with you going forward. The other group that I wanted to make a thank you to is the staff at the ministry that I think we have worked extremely close with over the last almost year that I have been here. I think we've developed a good working relationship and hope to continue that going forward. And also staff in the ministry office, appreciate again the support we've had from there. In particular, in regards, and I'm going to talk a bit more about this through the presentation, the financial commitment that we have from the provincial government, through our ministry, to really assist members with minimizing the fee increases as much as we can, still allowing us to do what needs to be done going forward. So big thank you to the ministry. And to my team, again, I've not been here that long. I appreciate the support from everyone, the enthusiasm and the dedication that you've shown to this point. And my final thank you is to everybody here today, members, but other stakeholders as well. I'm very aware that this file has taken up a lot of time over the last few years, probably way more time than people would have ever anticipated. And I want to acknowledge that, and thanks for your time and effort, and for attending today, and for the support. I'm going to say in advance that you'll give us, with the changes that we're looking to make here. So moving ahead, so the first thing that I do want to touch on is really why we are all here. And I try to include a few comments about this in every presentation I do, because we're here for public safety, and I sincerely mean that. It's not just the safety of people on the call, our employees, people that we may be working with, but really the whole province, everybody in the whole province of Ontario. And the underground infrastructure, the infrastructure that is buried today is, much more significant than it was when I started, which is over 40 years ago. The amount of infrastructure in the ground, the complexity, the dangers that it presents if not dealt with properly. And sometimes I'm concerned when we look at things like that we're discussing here today, fees and bylaws, transformation, that sometimes we kind of forget why we're here. And I just want to do a reminder, because at the end of the day, that's why we're here, that everything that we're doing is to support public safety. So if I move into the presentation, as I said, I want to talk a bit about the transformation that we are going through and have gone through. Although this says 2023, it actually started back last year with a new mandate. And when I mentioned new mandate, we were, I think, for years viewed as a contact center, but that changed, probably just about a year ago, or maybe a little longer ago than that, with the new legislation, the new regulation, providing more tools here for us at Ontario One Call to utilize in trying to speed up the locate process, make it easier for those doing construction, be it contractors or homeowners, to get the locates on time and move forward. And quite often that's looked at as the APs, but I think it's not just that. I think there are other tools, and I'm going to talk a bit about the APs at the end, because I'm sure even though it's on hold at the moment, there's questions about is it coming back and how are we going to work with that? So I will touch on that. But the mandate has obviously changed, and changed significantly. New board makeup. Dean talked extensively about that. I won't go into details, but I would like to thank particularly the outgoing board members. To go from the number of members that we currently have down to the members that will remain is significant. And everybody that has left the board, resigned from the board. Everyone that I've talked to wanted to stay. I think they were all sad to go. They realized why, and I think that demonstrates the commitment they put forward, and also the interest in Ontario One Call. The new bylaw is going to touch on that in the next slide, but really just for good governance. The new fees and the investment from government. Again, going to go into that a little bit, well, actually a fair bit more detail in a couple more slides. And then the new industry consultation. So that's the consultations that we went through at Ontario One Call in conjunction, or I should say in partnership with the ministry, and involved a number of you on the call, and a number of others. A lot of it is in regards to possible changes in legislation and regulations, but also there was part of that in what can we do at Ontario One Call to be better. We did a wrap up, I guess I would call it, webinar on that. I think it was last week, and again, lots to do there, and I'm going to touch on that a bit more again later in the presentation. And I think this is kind of circular, because the consultations will feed into the new mandate, and I think the mandate will continue to change. So that's the transformation. And maybe the next slide, I'm going to look a little bit just on kind of some of the things we've done this year. And that started with our 2023 business plan that we put together, I believe, last December. And it's relatively simple. It's a business plan. It's not a strategic plan. I do believe when the new board gets in place, we see what changes may come as a result of legislation that we do need to go through a formal strategic planning exercise, but that is down the road a bit. So, senior staff and really all the staff here at Ontario One Call banded together late last year to put together a business plan. The 4 items on there you can see, but again, all of them support our Feet Up to Safety, which is why we are here. The governance one, I'll go to it first. Talked a bit about, with the board change, the bylaw changes also support that, and it really just putting proper governance at the board level, but really throughout the organization in place to be able to deliver on our mandate, the current mandate, and as it changes. Compliance was identified again at the time we looked at this. The APs were looming. When I started here, there were a lot of comments, a lot of questions from members in particular about how is that going to be handled? Were people going to be levied with large penalties, monetary penalties? April 1st of this year, we spent a lot of time messaging how we were going to go about that, working with people, trying to get improvement. And, our intention had been, to put this tool, the administrative penalty, sort of in the background until we got to the fall, see how people were doing, how organizations were doing, and then possibly utilize it. We didn't have the ability to utilize it, but I think we saw pretty good progress, as a result. And that really is just from working with people. And it's not just from what we did at Ontario One Call, but, a collaborative effort from everyone. The operational excellence is probably one of the bigger ones here. I think all of us at Ontario One Call realize that all stakeholders would like to see improvements in a number of areas. We realize that we need to get better, but we really need, the financial tools to be able to do that, and they just don't exist at this point, which actually leads us into which I believe is the next slide. Oh, no, sorry, I apologize. I'll talk a bit about the bylaws, and then the financial plan comes after that. So I'll go through these slides relatively quickly, and I know Ian talked about these in detail during the webinars. So I just want to touch on them sort of quickly. So the next slide just indicates what bylaws are for. They are a tool, a governance tool to help run the organization. The third bullet point on here, I think, is the most important one, because I have been posed questions from members in regards to, are there things in the bylaws that sort of trump what's in the legislation or in the regulation? And the simple answer to that is no, they can't do that. Basically the way it works, you have the legislation. We have 2 pieces of legislation, our own act and then the Not-for-Profit Act. And we are a not-for-profit corporation. We're not under the Business Corporations Act like LDCs, communications companies would be. So they're sort of at the top, and everything else follows from that. And then you have the regulations that the government, the ministry will put in place. And then our bylaws come under that. So nothing in our bylaws can trump or give us powers to do things that are covered in the legislation or are contrary to the legislation or the regulation. So I wanted to point that out. The next slide just looks at why we are doing the changes. So the Not-for-Profit Act that we are governed by has changed. With our ministry, we have a memorandum of understanding because of the transformation here at Ontario One Call, and part of that is becoming a true administrative authority, which we weren't quite before. There's a new MOU that will impact the bylaw, and there will be some changes as a result of that. And I think as we work through this, at the next AGM special member meeting, this will probably be revised somewhat again, some of the bylaws, because of the MOU that's being negotiated with the ministry right now. The regulation I touched on, and really just best practices. I think there are some things that we can improve on, and I talked about that under the business planning governance. So the next slide goes into a little bit more detail as to the changes, particularly for bylaw 1. I don't intend to read through all these bullet points here. The first one, again, the Not-for-Profit Act, one example is, different conflict of interest requirements we need to filter through to the bylaws. The ministry, obviously, with the board composition resulting in changes, and then best practice, and again, an example, just the role of the position that I now occupy being laid out better in the bylaw. So that's bylaw 1. The next slide touches on Schedule 1 to bylaw 1, just to complicate things a little bit more. It's not just bylaws, but also schedules. So again, the regulation and best practices, and a lot of this is just cleaning up some things and making sure that the schedules and the bylaws all work well together. And again, the points are there. I don't intend to read through all of these, but if we go to the next slide, and bylaw 2, some relatively significant changes here. Now, there were very significant changes to all these bylaws, even to the numbering, the order, and whatnot. And a lot of this is just cleaning up good governance and setting the organization up for success going forward. So this one, I said we are now an administrative authority. I think, as the ministry said, we're the newest safety administrative authority. And just trying to get in line with the other public safety administrative authorities. And this one is significant in that it will allow the board to set the fees going forward. Now, in addition to the board, the ministry will also have a significant role in this as well going forward. So it's not just the board. I think there's one more slide for the bylaws. No, that wraps it up for the bylaws. So again, I went through that relatively quickly. If there are questions in this regard, Ian is available to answer some of the more detailed questions on a go-forward basis. So when I finished off the business plan, I made the comment that to deliver on this and be successful, we do need to change the or we do need to look at our financial future here. And I think maybe I'm trying to wrap this up in a sentence. The easiest way to say it is we need to put this on a setting that it's sustainable going forward, because where we're sitting today from a financial perspective, it is not sustainable. And this slide, I think, demonstrates it. And I realize this is a relatively basic slide, but for me, it kind of sets the picture as to I guess what the problem is here. And I've referred to it, I guess, in a couple of ways. One is the financial hole. The finance people don't like me calling it a hole. And I've also called it a bit of a mess, and the communications people don't like that. So neither of those words necessarily work, but I think I think both of them, in a pretty basic way, describe what we're looking at here. At Ontario One Call, it is a hole, and it's pretty significant. I guess we, or the current team, first realized this when we went through the budget process last December in, setting the budget for this year. And, kind of from an order of magnitude, the feeling was we've really got about half the revenue to deliver on what we should have been delivering on in the past and what we need to do going forward. So, the situation we're in is a result of underfunding in the past, and which I'll talk about in a second, and a change of mandate going forward. Now, I think the first webinar, and I did this incorrectly, I talked about the increases in revenue, the fee increases to members in the past hadn't necessarily kept up with inflation. That's not quite true. It kept, more or less, it kept up with inflation. The issue was we never had the amount to invest in what needed to be done, and particularly in systems and people. And I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. So, a bit of underfunding in the past. The comment about inflation was more the last couple of years. So there were no rate increases for this year, no fee increases for this year. And I think it's the year before where, a relatively big jump in inflation. COVID obviously contributed to that, but minor fee increases at that point. But before, more or less kept up with inflation. But if we go back a fair length in time, there were also some rebates and whatnot that took place that, in hindsight, probably should have been put into reserves or put into some of the systems. And then going forward, I talked about the mandate change. Obviously, there's going to be requirements, people, systems, whatnot, to meet that. And particularly coming out of the consultations, concerns about that. So this kind of paints the picture. Before I go on to kind of how we're going to deal with this, I think it was, I don't know if it was the last webinar or the wrap up of the consultations. There was a question in the chat about, why aren't you talking about or focusing on, and I'm not going to get the right word, but it was sort of fiscal responsibility as opposed to just saying you need more money. We have done that. To get to to show you the slides on the 3-year plan and the fee increases, which are significant. This has gone through an incredible amount of scrutiny. It went to the board finance committee 3 times starting last February, into the board meetings 3 times. It has been under a microscope, and I mean that, with government, with ministry, with other ministries as well, since February. The plan as it's today is not what we started with. We've done a combination of top down and bottom up budgeting, and the amounts actually have been reduced. So there has been a lot of scrutiny put into it, and I realize this is a big ask, and we're not doing it lightly. But it is needed for our sustainability going forward. And just some of the things that we are going to utilize this for, and some of the things that were lacking in the past, are shown on the next slide. And this was a third, the bullet points here come from a third party, so KPMG. The board had them come in, do a look at the organization. In these areas here, KPMG indicated that there was underfunding. So basically staffing, people issues, IT systems, including cybersecurity. The compliance was one, and this was before looking at APs. And I don't want people to think, yeah, we're looking at compliance so we can go out and administer APs. That's not the case. I think there's a lot of ways that we can work with people without that, and I've talked extensively about that in the past. And then marketing and communications, just getting our message out. It's incredible the number of people in this province who have no idea that they need to call before they dig, and we need to change that. Other things that aren't on the slide that I just want to mention quickly, and I think it's important that people realize some of the things that we are dealing with here, and again, why the big ask. So, a lot of this is around staffing, and it's not to pad the organization. It's to build the organization to where we need it and to keep people. So last year, our turnover rate here at Ontario One Call was just under 50%. So just under 50%. I know that's hard to believe. And when I say that, a lot of people say, well, it's a contact center. There's always turnover. Yes, realize that, but it was throughout the organization. And you can't have a sustainable organization and deliver on what people are looking for with that kind of a turnover. The salaries here are low to keep people, low to attract people. There's no retirement plan, there's no savings plan. And if we're going to build an organization that's successful and sustainable, these things need to be dealt with. And all of you, I think, realize that in your day-to-day jobs. Another example, just a small thing. This is a big ask. It's a pivotal meeting. We would love to have done this in person. I would much sooner be standing in front of everybody, talking, being able to see facial expressions, body languages, answer questions in person. But the main driver for doing this virtual is we can't afford to do something like this in person at this point. On the employee side, up until recently, there was no financial support here. We had some members of the organization who would chip in and help with spreadsheets and whatnot, but nobody with financial designation or nobody whose job was managing the finances. And it's not a big organization, but it's not a small, and that's just not prudent. That had to change. And there's no administrative support. Like no EA, no AAs, no secretaries. We all take that on ourselves, and that's not a complaint. It's just giving an idea of this is a pretty thin, pretty tightly run position. There's a lot of system issues that have come up. The operations committee that I've attended a couple times, we hear it there. we heard it during the consultations and we hear it on one-on-ones, but we need the money to do that. And the messaging out to the public, we need to improve on that. So again, I apologize for kind of going on, but we've been asked a lot of questions like, what are you going to spend the money on? Why do you need it? And I just thought I should go into that in a bit of detail. So the next slide shows how we are going to get out of this. So two things, and I mentioned this at the start with my thank yous. $25 million from the province through our ministry. We have worked with them since last February, and we have a commitment for that over a little bit this year and then over the next 3 years. And I have to thank the ministry. I think it's important that members realize the reason the ministry is doing this is to soften the blow on members. Now, I realize that it's a big increase that we're asking for members. It's 20% per year over the next 3 years. And we're doing it over the next 3 years because I think it's important that you realize sort of the full picture here. So we don't do the increase this year, come back next year with, oh, we need an increase next year, and then the third year. We've looked at it over 3 years, and we've come up with a plan to help getting us out of the situation we're in over that time. So I think it's important that people are aware of that. But again, just need to draw attention to the ministry's contribution. And it was to soften the blow. It was for the benefit of members. And I'm not lessening the impact on members. I realize that. And I compare the situation that we're in to what I'm sure a number of you have seen or probably are dealing with now. And that's an infrastructure backlog that I think in a lot of organizations existed or still exist. What we're dealing with is not the magnitude that you guys are, but to me, there's a bit of a comparison. It reminds me of that. So that's our plan to get out of the situation that we are in. And the next slide. So this, I'm not going to go through any of this. This is in the materials, but one of the members, and I thank them for doing this, pointed out to me last week that people would like to see a bit more detail as to what the revenue looks like in the expenditures over the next 3 years. And this just gives a picture of it. I said the material is in the this slide or the details is in the material. I don't think there's much point to me going through it, but it's available. It's a plan. It's not a budget. We actually did a 5-year financial plan, and then we pared it down to this, and that's where the the 25 million the rate increases are shown. So then the next slide looks at just the split between what we're getting from the province and what we're getting, through fee increases from members, just so you can do a bit of comparison. And then what our baseline is, the 9.8 million. So you see how the different revenue sources blend in there. And then if I go to the next slide, so this looks at the impact that the increases will have on a member's fees if you paid $10,000 a year today. Now, I realize that there are some members who pay extensively more than that. And we have 2 or 3 members that pay the lion's share of the revenue. And so obviously much more. I also realize that there's a very large number of members that pay a lot less than this. And it's not the average, but kind of the median as to what people pay. So again, just it shows you what the impact could be if your current fees are 10,000, and that 10,000 is an easy number to convert to 1,000 or 50,000 with a multiplier. So again, just for your information. So the next slide, and I'm going to go through this quickly because I've talked a bit about this already, but this is what we're going to invest in. So service delivery improvements, getting better, being able to act on a number of things that we've heard from the consultation. Sector education, this is not, need to be very clear about this. This is not training locators. This has nothing to do with that. And I want to be clear on that because that there's sometimes concern about our role in that. It's educating, homeowners, members, the contractors, so that we can all be more efficient in how we use our systems. And the other one is just, again, I'm not going to go through these in detail. You can read them. But getting the message out to the public that, for safety reasons, you need to call us before you do any type of an excavation, and we do need to focus on that and get more of a message out. So then moving forward, to the next slide. So real progress. I have another comment on the financial, but I think I'll make that near the end. So Dean touched on this, and this is a annual general meeting, so you want to talk about your successes and kind of where you're going. I think it was important to cover off the bylaws and the finance because I realize it's a big ask, but and Dean noted this, and I would say this thing. I'm actually very proud of the success that we have made over the last year. And as he said, it shows for a contractor when all the locates are done, like an incredible improvement. The thing I want to point out here is we did this without issuing an AP. And I mean, that may sound silly because they weren't available. But I think at the start, the feeling was the only way the organization is going to, not the organization, the industry is going to improve is if we utilize the tool. I think it was a good tool to have in our back pocket. But as I said at the start, I don't think it's something that we needed to go out and utilize right away. And I want to put this up here more for the kind of the going forward. So, the regulation is set to come back April 1st. And our stance next year, April the 1st, will be the same as it was this current year. We don't tend to come out guns a-blazing looking to penalize people. I think we've shown a pretty good track record of working with people over the past year, and we continue to do this next year, and hopefully we can continue to improve on that. So then I'm getting close to the end, just so I realize this has gone on for a while. So the next slide talks a bit about looking forward, and again, I think this is what you should be doing at an AGM. And I'm going to keep this. I'm going to keep this relatively quick because I know I've gone on for a fair length of time here. So looking forward, for us to be successful, we do need to get the support of everyone for our financial asks for the fee increases. The way the organization is, and I don't want to go on too long about this because I've talked about it, it's not sustainable. But the things that you're looking for from us, the things that we want to deliver on, we can't do. We can't do without the money to do it. And I think people can relate to this. I think we've got a good plan in place. I'm asking you to support it. It's necessary for us to deliver. I really appreciate what the government, what the ministry has done. And there are questions. Well, why do you need the fee increases if you're getting 25 million? So the ministry has been very clear with us, and again, I appreciate this, and we are going to deliver on this. At the end of the 3 years, we're not going to go back looking for more money. Like getting this from the province is very unusual. It happens very infrequently. So we need to have a system in place that when the 25 million is done, we can carry on and we're sustainable. Hence the fee increases that we're looking at over the next 3 years. So that there's not a huge cliff that exists between our level of funding now and what it will be as we go into the 4th year. There is a bit of a cliff there, and it was shown on the financial plan. One of the things that we need to do over the next 3 years is come up with a financial plan for the following, I think 5 years. I actually think 3 years is too short. And part of that is looking at, what should be our revenue sources going forward. Currently, it's basically members that pay 95% of it. There's a little bit of user fee that's not coming from members, but most of it is from members. I think we need to look at that. And, is it the right mix? Should more pay? Should there be a licensing fee or something like that for excavators? And, there was a proposed, I call this like a performance-based, can't get the right word here, but a performance-based system for setting people's rates for this year. We scrapped that as we went into the budget last year. We didn't, well, I shouldn't say we scrapped it. We put it on hold. Just the way the system was designed and whatnot, it was very hard to understand. And in all honesty, we weren't ready to put it in place. I go back to the systems and whatnot. There would be a cost for this, and we just didn't have the money to do it. But I think that's something we need to look at going forward. We need to look at it so it's not perceived we're double dipping with APs. I realize that, but we do need to look at that. So there's still more work that needs to be done. And if we get the support today, we will do that on a go forward basis. The other thing, looking forward, We just finished up this exercise with consultations with a number of you, all different stakeholders with the ministry. We need to, and we have presented a bit of a plan as to what we need, what we are looking to do. But I think we need more conversations with all stakeholders before we go too far down this road. I think there's a lot of things that we here at Ontario One Call can do to make your lives easier, but that needs agreement from all stakeholders. And I have seen with some suggestions, there's a perspective from infrastructure owners, a different perspective from excavators, and a completely different perspective from locators, locate service providers. I think there needs to be more conversations about that before we go forward. But I think there's a lot of good things there that we do need to focus on and put in place. And I think there's a lot of changes that we need to make here at Ontario One Call. And you have my word that we are committed to work with you to make that happen going forward. And on that note, the other thing that I want to see us do is continue on with what hopefully people have seen that we're doing, and that's more outreach, more talking to people, more engagement. I would have liked to have had a few more months before we're sitting here with the ask that we have today to get out and talk to people to kind of get our message across. But that is something that we need to do going forward. We really need to focus on the engagement with members, infrastructure owners, but also excavators, and continuing on with the ministry and other stakeholders. Industry associations is a good example. The final one, and you've heard me talk a little bit about this. I think the process that we have today for locates can be improved on, but it really needs everybody collaborating together. And one of the things that I want to do is work with a number of stakeholders to really dive deep into how locates are done, right from somebody making a call to the excavation starting. Taking a lot of stuff that came out of the consultations, diving deeper into it, and just seeing kind of how can we get better. But again, that's going to take time. It's going to take finances. But I think if we do these things, I think at the end of the day, it will pay off for everybody and make everybody's lives better and be more efficient for everyone. So that's the end of the kind of the bulk part of my presentation. I have a couple of logistical things if I've got this right to touch on. So the last slide, I think I've said that already. If we work together better, if we work together collectively, we can be better, we could be faster, and at the end of the day, this is safer. But going back to my initial comment. So the next slide, and this is just a reminder, we are now going to open the voting. So for delegates who are registered to vote, and I may not have the terminology of that correct, but you will be receiving or maybe have just received your ballot. The voting will stay open to 11:30, and I think Valentina is going to repeat all this, but we hope to have the results out to everybody by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Maybe sooner than that, but it's not a simple process with the 5 categories, weighting the votes and whatnot. So we need to tabulate the votes, blend them in with the proxies, and then it needs to be audited. So we have to get this right before we go public with it. So I guarantee you it will be out by 9 tomorrow morning if things go well, possibly sooner. Oh, Valentina, can you go back again? Sorry. So and again, I realize people are aware of it, but what you're voting on, the bylaws, electing the directors, part of a normal AGM, but and I'm not downplaying a very important part of this with the governance changes, the auditor, again, a standard thing, and then the fees that we've talked about. So but you can go forward now. So again, I think I've said everything that's on this. Please do vote. And again, I am asking you for your support. I realize it's a big ask. I've been in positions to what many of you are. I understand the impact on you, but this is necessary for us to go forward, for us to be sustainable. And I think at the end, we will make it worth your while. So thank you with that. And I think, Valentina, that's the end of the slides and we're into questions, although I may have that wrong.
Yes, thank you, Jim. I just want to remind everyone that if you have any voting issues, you can contact us at voting@ontarioonecall.ca. We have a team that is ready to help you. You should have received your ballots by now, or in the next few minutes. They're going out as we speak, and they are sent to your email. I also want to remind people that we are happy to answer questions. You can submit them using the Q&A button at the top of your window. I believe we do have a question for now, and my colleague Jeff and I are facilitating the Q&A process. So I'll have Jeff start.
Thanks, Valentina. The first question is, it looks like be from an excavator. Does Ontario One Call have on-time locate request completion statistics available by region? This particular excavator is not seeing 70% of their locates complete on time in their region and would be interested to see local average completion times.
So thanks for the question. Very good question. In hindsight, that's probably one that I should have the results available for. And I'm going to, I think Katie is on. I'm going to ask her to kind of add to this. But before, so the 70% is provincial, and we've heard actually that comment before. I mean, I think some areas better, some areas not as good. But I don't, Katie, and I apologize for putting you on the spot, but maybe I'll get you to address that, please. So Katie's our Chief Operating Officer. Oh, Katie, you're on mute.
Thank you. Double muting always wins. So we have posted the performance data on our website. It goes out basically every month. So in the middle of the month, the month before it was posted. So you can actually see much more detail in terms of the month-to-month performance. And it does split up by the different regions. And I know that Ian has some additional information on this possibly. So if you wanted to chime in more, Ian, please feel free to do so. And we will post the link, sorry, as well. Go ahead.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you, Katie. Yeah, as Katie mentioned, we do try to get out the data as quickly as possible at Ontario One Call. So we actually have a page called a compliance report page that anybody can access by going to our compliance and industry standard, our industry section on our website, and they click on compliance reports, and it breaks it down by region, based on the month before. Now, it's not live like the question asked, like it's not an immediate, but it is a sense of where locates are trending in the different regions. And that is available mid-month for the month before. Now, I just also want to mention that if you are a contractor that has put in a locate request, you can monitor your own locates that are coming in for that project by going into our web portal and tracking that locate request number to see what's going on in your actual request. But thank you for the question.
I also posted, sorry, Jeff, I just want to mention to everyone that I posted the link to the compliance reports page in the Q&A. Go ahead.
Thanks, everyone. Just a quick reminder, if you do have a question, you're going to need to type it out. You cannot raise your hand in order to ask a question. Please type it out and we will ask it for you. Another question, this might be to everybody here. How are we going to measure success for the first year of this transition?
So another very good question. I will start. So I think internally there are a number of things that we need to set in place that probably a lot of people on the call wouldn't even see. So I talked about like governance, and I talked about it at a number of different levels. So there's our involvement obviously with the provincial government, there's the board, but there's also internal governance. And there are a number of things that a lot of organizations would expect to have in place that they just don't have in place. So I talked a bit about, financial support. So for me, kind of in this position, that would be one of the items. I think with the change over in the board, so I'm still in governance, you know, getting the board oriented, you know, used to, or maybe a little more familiar with Ontario One Call, up to speed, and then going through a strategic planning session, as I mentioned as well, I would see as a big success in the transformation. And then, you know, ongoing work with the ministry as they, you know, look to work through the consultation as another one. So that would be the first one. The second one, and this is probably more where the question was related to, you know, we're coming to the end of this excavation season. We're, you know, before we know it, we're going to be into next spring and headed into another season. And the results that we have shown to this point, and we showed one slide, and Katie and Ian talked about there's a number of other measures that we have. I would like to see continued improvement in that, and you know, that's data, that's factual, that we can show. I also wonder if there's not other data that we can gather to be able to show as ongoing success. There's a number of other things I could touch on, but I'm going to leave it at that. And yeah, I think the point that I'm trying to make is there is internal success as part of the transformation that we see, but then there's external external improvements that others will see as well. So I'm not sure if others on the panel want to add to that, Jeff, before you go to the next question.
I could just quickly add from a technology perspective, as that is quite a large initiative in the organization and where a lot of the funding will be put towards. We do measure various items that will help us understand the trends that either burden or improve the industry so that we can make sure that we react accordingly. And some of these metrics will include reviewing our notification levels, so the information received by the members or their LSPs regarding a locate request. The increase or decrease of those notification levels is reviewed not just by the sheer number, but also by the ratio of the members per locate request. So this means that we could be improving our mapping. It means that we could be improving the quality of our locate requests, etc. All of these will help us improve the health of the industry in terms of the locate world. So these are other ways that we can look at the system and our improvements to make sure that we're doing a better job.
And Jim, if I could add one more piece to measurement. Our friends would know that we do publish an annual report every year, that in the annual report, we go over our business plan and we talk about the things that we've achieved. We've produced a 2023 business plan and intend to, you know, produce a report on how we've done against that plan. And that plan has 4 main buckets of activity: safety, compliance, organizational excellence, and governance. And so our friends will see in the not too distant future the results that we've achieved against that 2023 business plan. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Dean, did you, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm just wondering from a board perspective, if there's anything that you'd like to add to that? Just want to give you the opportunity.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get off the mute. I think you guys have covered it off well. I just will end up repeating the same things. So thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Great answers. I have just another reminder for people. If you've raised your hand and are attempting to ask a question, I can't hear you. You will have to type out into the Q&A section of Teams in order for us to ask your question. Next one comes from Frank. He is having trouble with the last step of voting, verifying their account. What should Frank do?
Yeah, go ahead, Ian.
Just getting myself off mute. Thank you. Great question. Thank you, Frank. Just in case you're not the only person, that's a great question to put out here. Please, we have a whole bunch of staff that are waiting to help you through the process. Just reach out to an email address. It's voting@ontarioonecall.ca, and our friendly staff there will help you out. Thank you, Jeff.
Sorry, and I just want to mention that I also put that in the Q&A for everyone to see, specifying that you have until 11:30 this morning to vote. You can find the email for troubleshooting there.
And good news, Frank did figure it out, so that is fantastic. Next question. Will the annual increases continue if you do not hit your internal metrics that Katie spoke of?
So, I would say yes. They're currently not tied to any metrics. But I mentioned earlier when I was talking about fiscal responsibility that the interest the board, obviously, and the ministry has put into what we are doing. And without getting into detail, there is a very extensive, I'm going to call it checklist. The checklist is it's way more than a checklist, but there's a number of items that we need to be reporting on to the ministry on an ongoing basis. So this is not just a yearly report. Number one, to make sure that the money that we are going to get from the ministry continues to flow, because it's not all at once. It's over a little bit more than a 3-year period. And, you know, a lot of that ties into what the question is, or was asked. Like, if we're not successful doing what we said we were going to do, then that's going to become questionable. So yeah, a lot of I guess pressure is probably the best word on us here to perform, you know, to get the resources that we need.
Excellent, thanks. Just a fourth reminder, if you have your hand up, I cannot hear you. You will not be able to ask your question unless you put it in the Q&A section of the chat. Other than that, oh, here we go. A question from an old friend of mine. Will training for locators be available soon?
Wow, that's a good question. There's maybe others that I would want to ask that to as well. So as far as the actual locator training, and I think that's actually a good question, because throughout the industry, there are very different perspectives on that. So I would say yes, there will be training, but that's not going to be through Ontario One Call. You know, there are a number of different, you know, associations. And Katie, I know you're on the board of one of them. I may ask, I'm going to bump this to you in a second. There are other different groups that are looking at doing this. You know, we have been in, I can't say constant conversation with the ministry about the need for this. So that's not something that Ontario One Call is going to be taking on, at least not in the near future. The training that we're talking about, or that I talked about, was more in how to use our systems, like how to properly ask for a locate, you know, with some of the members, the feedback and whatnot, but not per se for locators. Yeah, my personal view is training for locators needed. You know, some sort of a, I don't know, certification licensing process along those lines. I think so, but that's not something that we are looking into. But Katie, again, just with your position on the board, you may want to just briefly touch on this.
Sure. Like Jim said, not much on the Ontario One Call side in terms of the locating training at this time. But as I sit on the board with the ORCGA, there is a program that they're working with very hard on, and, you know, giving a little bit of a plug there. We do want to be supportive in these types of endeavors because it is a very important part of the industry to make sure that locators have a stable and consistent training if at some point in time. I think that would help the industry overall. And I think we could help us expand certain models, such as the dedicated locator model. It would help more locators be in the position moving into different organizations or throughout organizations, and keeps a consistent level of work going. So thank you.
Jeff, if I could add to that, and not directly to what Katie said, which I agree with, but you know, there's a number of topics in this industry that kind of gets bounced around. That the training is one. I think one of our goals, and I talked a little bit about this engagement, but one of our goals, and hopefully people will see a bit of a change here at Ontario One Call, is to work with a number of organizations, because we're not going to be successful if we're all butting heads. And yeah, I think with Katie being on the board, working with that group, it's great. You know, and there are others, the OEA as an example, a group that we've worked pretty closely with. That's something that I want to continue doing. The locator training is one, but a number of other items as well. So I just wanted to make that point.
Great. Thank you very much for those answers. I do have the person who was raising their hand did actually get their question over to us. So they're a member that has a few different silos within their organization. They're wondering whether they get 3 votes for each of those sections of their organization, or they get 1 vote. How is voting by member determined?
So I'm going to let Ian answer that, and I'll let Ian, I may have a comment afterwards, but go ahead, Ian.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jim, for passing it over. And Jeff, great question. Yes. So members only have 1 vote. So if you are a registered member with Ontario One Call, each registered member has only 1 vote. And that could have been done either through proxy up to 48 hours in advance, or through the ballot process, which is currently going on right now with an electronic ballot. So if you are a member and you're a delegated voting person for that organization and you have not received a ballot, there's a limited time, but you can reach out to our staff at voting@ontarioonecall.ca.
Thank you very much. Next question, is the government funding contingent to the approval of the fee increases?
Yeah, that's a so I'm going to say kind of. So in the agreement we have with the government, it doesn't say if we don't get the fee increases, we don't get the we don't get the 25 million. But it was a big part of the negotiations because as I addressed early, if we don't have a plan here to be sustainable after the 3 years, then they're not prepared to fund. And there's I would not want to put us in the position of continuing discussions with the government because the money's not all flowing at once, to make sure that happens if there's no clear plan for not having a cliff at the end of it. So I would say sort of yes, without question. And to the fee increases, there was an incredible amount of discussion with the government about the level of the fee increases. And I think their desire, because the reason they're coming to the plate is they want to reduce the impact on members, and that's very clear. They want to reduce the impact on members, and it was from their perspective, reducing the impact, not having a big impact on members, but then not having this cliff at the end of it. So, if for some reason we don't get approval today, and I'm fairly confident we will, and again, we need to, one of the first discussions tomorrow is going to be with the government, like what does that do with the overall picture? Because I'm sure they're going to have a perspective on this. So I don't mean to be wishy-washy on it. I know I feel like I am, but I think it will have an impact. It's not written in that it's necessary, but it was a huge part of the.
Thank you so much, Jim. We do have some more questions. What kind of technical enhancement are planned?
I'm just going to let Katie talk to that.
Okay. There's actually a phenomenal list of things that we have planned, a number of priorities. I could list them off all. I'm just going to focus on a couple, though. One of the big ones that we're working on right now is an easier format for the submission and working through the dedicated locator requests. So we are looking to expand our web portal in order to be able to facilitate those requests better. Right now, most of that is happening manually. And as we work on some of the processes and procedures and taking down the barriers for the dedicated locator, we're also working on a technological side so that we're ready for when this model expands. The other thing that we're looking at right now is sharing of locates. So sharing of locates was a big topic at some of the consultations that we had over the summer, which we participated in with the ministry. We heard a lot of people say that would really help being able to identify who else will be working in a certain area in terms of a certain excavation activity. So we will be looking at enhancing that. The list really does go on and on. We're looking at improving mapping. We're looking at improving the quality of the locate requests, etc. We'd be happy to give you some more detail. It was shared at the previous webinars that we had that were held just about a week ago and the one before that. So there's a little bit of detail there. We'd be happy to share a list of things that we're looking to improve with the funding as we go forward so they have a better idea. So we'll take that away and put that in the communication. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Next question. If Ontario One Call starts to see revenue from other streams the next 3 years, will the 20% increase still continue?
So probably, but what it would do is lessen any increases that we would see going forward after the 3 years. Now, I mean that's the plan. You know, so the plan, and maybe I'm going to approach this a little differently. We need to be clear about this. If things don't, so if we get approval for the 3 years of 20% increase, there's absolutely nothing that would have that could happen that we would come back looking for more, because I've got to ask that question before. Well, if we approve 20% for 3 years today, next year you're going to come back and ask for an addition to that. No, that's not going to happen. You know, if there was some kind of a windfall or something, I would say yes, we would obviously have to consider that. But in answering that, if the concern is around TPs, or sorry, not TPs, APs, too many P's here, administrative penalties. You know, when we had the ability for APs, we did not include it in the budget, because I don't want anybody to view that way, just going out charging us so you have money to operate on. So if it was around that's just not going to happen. Yeah, if there was some kind of windfall, we would obviously have to have a discussion with the board and go back and look at that.
Thank you so much, Jim. I have another one. Can you provide an overview of what the penalties for non-compliance will look like? Amount per day, enforcement, etc.
Boy, if you'd have asked me that 6 months ago, I could have told you. I think for this call, no, that's something that we can make available. But any penalties aren't available until at least April the 1st next year. The reg has been put on hold. My understanding is the intention is it will come back April 1st next year. But our intention here at Ontario One Call is the same as it was going into April of this year. We intend to work with people, to look for improvement, and as long as we see that, we don't intend to issue penalties, and that would be our plan going forward. Now, there are a couple of areas, on purpose digging without locates and things like that it would be a bit different, but just, from a member's perspective, that's how we would approach it. And I think as far as what the penalties would be going forward, we can get that message out electronically to the group afterwards. We'd have to do a little bit of digging, and I think Jeff is a fair amount of calls here, so I don't want to go into detail on that at the moment.
That's a good point, Jim. This one might be a little bit more on topic, but also is related to administrative penalties. Will the funds received through administrative penalties be used for the same investments as the increased member fees?
So easy answer to that is no, absolutely not. There are a number of, so we're very restricted what we can use them for, and it's not for the type of stuff that we're talking about now. That being said, there's some education, promotion, and whatnot, but that would be different from what we're planning on doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Another one, if Ontario One Call is shifting from a service provider to a public safety administrative authority similar to ESA and the TSSA, should we expect to see a certification program in the future for locate service providers and dedicated locators?
So There's nothing planned for that at the moment. I think that's a discussion topic that is, you know, going to be focused on over the next number of years. But at this point, no, there is not.
Thank you very much. Has Ontario One Call ever thought of being the locate depository, meaning instead of sending locates out to the person requesting, they're held at Ontario One Call and available via the web portal?
I'll just take that. Yes, that's definitely been thought of as sort of an arching, a holistic program or portal. But at this time, there isn't yet a plan to make that into a reality, but it certainly is one of the things that we can explore in the future.
Thank you, Katie. I have one for Dean or Jim. Does the board of directors have a plan in place to support the business to ensure their success and governance of the additional budget?
So I will start with that. So one of the things that we are putting in place is I'd say a very formal governance process, but not governance including the board at this point, governance process for budgeting, spending, et cetera, of the money we're getting from the province, and that's a requirement. And you know that can be made. This can all be made public. But then the intention is to also utilize that for the money that we get from members. That will then go to the Risk Audit and Finance Committee of the board, and then on to the board at regular meetings of the board. So yes, that is being put in place. It's not finalized now, but we've had a number of discussions in that regard. The other thing, and this is maybe a little bit more general, I mentioned about the lack of financial expertise in the organization. That hole was filled probably about 4 months ago, maybe a little longer ago than that. And as a result of that, there are a number of processes that we are putting in place from a financial oversight perspective. Also, with the funds that we're receiving from the province, we're going to have to be much more in line with procurement and spending processes that is expected from provincial entities, as opposed to the type of organization we are now. So the quick answer to that was probably yes, but I just wanted to provide a little bit of detail. And Dean, I apologize if I jumped in there. Please go ahead.
No, you did well on that, Jim. I think the real thing is we are looking at that longer term strategy of what the roadmap looks like for Ontario One Call and the funding associated with it. And that is part of the funding fee increases and the support that was needed by the government. So I'm probably going a little deeper than most would expect on this topic. But the fees, without those fees, we can't move Ontario One Call forward. And some people might say, well, I haven't seen anything yet. So if I haven't seen anything yet, why am I paying fees? Because we're building out the organization the way the government and the way everybody wants this organization to run, and we have to have that money. And again, you can see the government has helped us to fund that. You look at the board many years ago, the fees were very minimal, if any, at times, and that's because the board drove that to control that. And you have to remember many of the same or the same types of representation are on the board, with another caveat is the government is very sensitive to fee increases as we continue to continue our journey at Ontario One Call, and making sure that that is managed and scrutinized extensively. So I just want everybody to realize that this is not a profit center. This is a non-for-profit and will continue to be that. And that is the focus, and making sure that we, as Ontario One Call, deliver value to Ontario the way that everybody wants it. Everybody still has to say on this at the end of the day, and we have to remember that as we continue to grow it out. And everybody's participation. We saw a lot of interaction in 22, and I think everybody realized that they do have a say of what is going to happen and where we're going to go when we work together across industry, across Ontario One Call. So I don't want anybody to lose sight of that. But this is the same thing we're going to continue to do to make Ontario One Call and Ontario's construction industry successful by getting locates done on time.
Great, thanks, Dean, and thank you also, Jim. I've got one last question for you. The financial report given at the beginning stated an exceedance of revenue targets. Why is there a predictive shortfall? This particular person also goes on to state that they think that excavators should be sharing the cost of the organization, and members should be allowed to charge to cover their back office work overload, and that there is too much burden on members.
So thanks for the questions and the comment, and I'm going to deal with the comment first, and then go to the question. I believe I stated somewhere in the presentation. I know I stated. Just trying to think where I made the comment about. It's a 3-year financial plan. It's not a budget. It's a plan, and it is designed in a way so that the cliff at the end, and when I talk cliff at the end, there's the 25 million that we're spending over the 3 years, and there's the buildup of the revenue from currently 9.5 million to I think it's around 17 million. So there is a bit of a drop at the end, and yes, it showed in the financial plan I think a 4.5 million gap there. One of the things that, as I said, we need to be doing in the next 3 years is look at what is our revenue model. I think we've done a very good job on what the expenses are, and there was a lot of scrutiny put into this. But what is our revenue model? Because today the revenue model, well, I mean, let's forget about the government funding for a moment, but going forward, the revenue model is fees that members pay for, that members pay based roughly on the number of locate requests that they get. It's not a completely true user pay system. It's close to that. There's a few other charges for individual things, some training courses and whatnot in the DL. And I know there's a lot of questions. Should DL be separate or should it be into the rates as well? So I very much think that over the next 3 years, and this is not waiting until the 3 years is done. There's a bunch of things that need to get in place over the next 9 months. And I think, as we come out of that, we need to really look at what the funding model is going forward. And I mentioned excavators or others. Is there, not necessarily a pay per request, but some sort of a licensing mechanism based roughly on volume. I don't know, but that's a possibility. Do we look more at performance-based billing for members? Do we become a little bit more exact to the? It's tied to the exact number of requests that come in for your infrastructure, or is there something completely different out there that we haven't even thought of that we can take a look at? So all that needs to be asked, and yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but I agree with the comments. This needs to be looked into, because right now, the cost is being borne by the members. Now, in saying that, I think there are some who should continue not to pay, homeowners, et cetera, because I go back to my first comment and my last comment. We're here for public safety, and we don't want to, put impediments into that. So yeah, the numbers don't completely match at the end of the 3 years. We're aware of that. I think one of the things that we need to look at over the course of the 3 years, as I said, it's a plan, it's not a budget. Do we tighten the numbers down a little bit more so that we meet that? And if we don't, then going forward in the next year, we need to have a plan that fills that gap. So a very, very good pickup from somebody to realize that. It's a pretty valid question, but there will be an answer for that before we get there.
Thank you, Jim. You mentioned increases to wages to increase employees' retention, but can you speak to other areas of the budget that would see an increase of funding as a result of the proposed fee increases?
So the fee increases, actually, let me go at this from a different angle. The money from the government goes to some very specific things. IT is the biggest by far, like by far, I think 75%. The next big area is in promotion, getting the message out, like call before you dig, very, very simply. And then the internal processes and whatnot was the other area that the government money will be utilized for. So there can be none of the government money spent on salaries, wages, etc. And there's a few other things that I just can't think of at the moment, but it's very specific. So with the members' fee increases, number one is going to be salaries, wages, particularly looking at retention. It's something that I am incredibly concerned about, and I will tell you, if we're not successful with what we're looking for here today, my concern will go up exponentially over the next little while. So that is going to be a focus. But in addition, so again, I go to the IT. There are some things that the government money will not fund. Some things that we have, contracts and that were entered into before that we need to continue to fund, and that would go to the same for some of the work from. Sorry. I don't normally talk this much all at once. From a communications perspective and getting the message out. So, but particularly in the first year, the salary and wages will be a big part of that because there's a number of resources that if we're going to carry out the mandate, so IT, like if we add a new system or change the system, we beef up our cybersecurity, but people to actually make that happen, it can't be covered by that. I think that's a good example. So there are others. I just, for the life of me, I can't put my finger on them right at the moment. And again, if that's a concern, if somebody wants to send us an email, we'll provide the details back on that. It's just I can't think of it at the moment.
Thank you, Jim. I have a question for Ian. If we could please get some clarification on the voting matters and specifically the resolutions.
Fantastic. Actually, there is a formal process that we have to do. So we're going to do that now. The formal process is I'm going to read each resolution. And for those who haven't been part of this in the past, I read each every resolution and I will pass it back to the chair, which will be Dean. And every resolution will need to have a motion and a second, and then passed, and then I will go to the next resolution. So there's 5 items that everyone's voting on, and so I will do the formal reading to get it into the minutes right now. So I'll start with resolution number 1. Resolution number 1 is approval of bylaw 1, which includes schedule 1. Resolved by the members hereby approve and confirm bylaw 1, including schedule 1, as enacted by the Board of Ontario One Call, which was approved on July 31st, 2023. I'll pass it to Dean.
So this resolution is moved by Mrs. Marner and second by Mrs. Taylor. Please ensure it's documented.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I'll move on to resolution number 2, and this is the approval of bylaw 2. Is resolved that the members hereby approve and confirm bylaw 2 as enacted by the Board of Ontario One Call on July 25th, 2023. I'll pass it back to Dean.
Again, this resolution is moved by Mrs. Marner and second by Mrs. Taylor.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chair. Moving on to resolution number 3. This is for the election of directors. It is resolved that the members hereby elect and the following persons as directors of Ontario One Call for the terms set out opposite their names. For member representatives, I will say everyone's first name. There is Dean, Uzni, Kevin, and Enrico. Their full names are in the ballots, and they're all for 1-year term. For excavator representatives, it is Jason, Darren, Dennis, and Derek. Again, their full names are on all the ballots, and they're for a one-year term as well. It is resolved that following the election, if elected, the board will then consist of the foregoing 8 people that I just mentioned, plus the 4 directors who will be appointed by the Ministry of Public and Business Service Delivery of Ontario as appointed directors for a total of 12 directors. I'll pass it back to the chair.
Again, this resolution is moved by Ms. Marner and second by Ms. Taylor.
Chair. The 4th resolution is appointment of auditors. It is resolved that the members hereby appoint the following person as auditors of Ontario One Call for the following year. Goldstein and Associates CPA Professional Corporation. I pass it off to the chair.
Resolution is moved by Ms. Marner and second by Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. And on to the 5th and final resolution on membership fee schedule. It is resolved as a special resolution that the new membership fee schedule in the form approved by the Board of Ontario One Call and presented to the members is approved unamended. Pass it to the chair.
Resolutions moved by Ms. Marner and second by Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is it for the resolutions, and I will pass the floor back to you and Jim.
All right, thank you, Ian. Jim, I don't know if there's anything else you want to touch on. We're coming to the end of our annual special members meeting.
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for attending, for comments, support that they've made through the year, and for support. And I realize it's a big ask, but we will deliver.
Something's going on. Oh, there we go. So as you can see, voting is now open. Ballots will be submitted, must be submitted by 11:30. And then we will come back to everybody with in a communication with the results. Jean, I don't know if there's a specific time frame that we will come back to the attendees on this.
Our plan is to get an announcement out before 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Great, thank you, Jean. I guess if there is nothing else at this point, I would like to close the annual special meeting for 2023. Thank you, everyone, for your support through this. I know it's been quite a challenge, quite a change, and your vote was very much appreciated and will be appreciated as we continue to move this organization forward. If there's any further questions, you can reach out to Jim Keach and his team with regards to that. So with that, I will ask that we move to close this meeting. Ms. Marner moves the motion to adjourn the meeting. Ms. Taylor will second the adjournment of the meeting. All in favor? Meeting is now officially adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.